All right, welcome and thank you for joining our webinar on viewing the latest updates in Sage Intacct 2021 for Release 4. My name is Kim Anselmo and I will help facilitate our webinar today. But before we get started, let's go through a few Zoom platform tips so you can engage with our presenters and have the best experience possible. So you should see a Zoom toolbar with icons for ask a question, chat, or raise your hand. And you can use the ask a question or chat to submit a question at any time or a comment. If you do need any assistance, click on the raise your hand and I will connect with you to help out. As I mentioned, do ask questions throughout the presentation. We'll do our best to answer them as we go along. If for some reason we don't answer one of your questions, we'll be sure to get in touch with you following the presentation. And if you do experience any audio issues during the session, you can adjust your settings and test your audio at any time. So at the bottom left-hand corner on the Zoom meeting toolbar, you'll find either a headphone or microphone logo to join audio or mute and unmute. So click that join audio to connect your computer audio and dial into the meeting with the phone. Or once your audio is connected, click mute to disable the audio and unmute to enable your audio. So, and finally, for CPE credits on the next slide, thanks. We'll be sending those out within about 72 hours of the webinar. You will receive a link to download the slide deck and the recorded presentation as well. If you have any technical difficulties during the polling part, please do send an email to elevate@armaninollp.com with your name, date, and the session that you attended, along with the responses that you meant to ask. So we do require that you actively respond to all of those polling questions as we put them up if you do want to receive your CPE credits, excuse me. And so with that, I'm going to go and hand it over to our presenters today, Irene Bushnell and Michelle Schimberg.
Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Irene Bushnell, Senior Manager here at Armanino. I've been with Armanino 5 years now and doing Sage Intacct since 2011. And I'm excited, as always, to share with you the new release features that came out last Friday. And with me today, Michelle.
Thanks, Irene. Hi, I'm Michelle Schimberg. I'm a director here at Armanino. I've been here 4.5 years, just short of Irene. Been a user of Sage Intacct for 5 years, and I've been helping clients with, I've been using it for 9 years, and I've been helping clients with it as a consultant for the last 4 years.
Excellent. So our learning objectives for today, we're going to identify the new release features that came out last Friday, as we mentioned. We're going to walk through some of those through our presentation today, as well as getting into Sage Intacct and showing you some of those features. And of course, make sure that you're able to hopefully start utilizing and maximizing that full potential of the latest release. Our agenda encompasses all of the modules that have new release features, and we're going to get started. Michelle's going to lead it off here with the company administration. And I think, Michelle, we're starting with a polling question.
We are starting with a polling question. So select which dimensions you have or think you can change the terminology. It's multiple choice. Good one. All right, lots of people are answering.
I'll give you just a few more seconds before I close the poll.
Remember, you want to respond to something. We're not judging you for your CPE.
Making them think right out of the chute, all these options here.
Seeing if they're paying attention.
Okay, gonna go ahead and close that poll in 3, 2, 1.
All right, great. So the only one that previous to this release you could not change the name of was employee. That is a new functionality that they've released this release. So now you can change your employee dimension. And Irene is showing us.
Yeah, so here in Intacct under company, your setup tab, terminology is listed right here. When you go to your terminology page, all of the dimensions that can be changed are listed here. And so employee is one that can now be edited, and you can have your own terminology for employee. So I think that pretty much at this point now, all of the dimensions can be renamed, which is awesome.
It's very helpful.
All right. Let's get started, Michelle.
Yep. Okay, so company administration. First of all, farewell to Internet Explorer. Some call it Internet Exploder. Microsoft is retiring the Internet Explorer desktop, and as a result, obviously you'll need to use a different browser if you're still using Explorer. And then, as we showed, the employee dimension can now be renamed. Next screen. All right, permission changes. So Intacct's constantly evolving. What they've done now is they have combined the receive advances and posted advances have been combined to be called receive advances. If you had either of these functionalities, what they did was they combined them so your permissions will continue. But if you're adding new people, you would need to update. That would be what you'd be looking for. And then the restriction release. So we'll go more into what the restriction release is, but this is just showing you that in order to use the new functionality of restriction release, you will need to update your permissions.
Perfect. Budgeting and planning. I've got an echo back there. There we go. Budgeting and planning. So everyone is aware now that it's called SIBP. It's Sage Intacct's Budgeting and Planning. It is subscription based. I know a lot of you are using it. It's an awesome budgeting tool that really allows you to do a lot with the budgets related to your actual data in Sage Intacct, and then manage all sorts of forecasting and dimensional budgets and all of that. One thing you may have noticed, or maybe not, but in Intacct, under the company menu, we now have a budgets module. So they've pulled that out of the general ledger, and there is a budgets module. From within the general ledger, you can still get to your budget. They've renamed it to budgets repository. So that is just basically your budget from before, standard out of the box budget functionality in Intacct. And then if you go to the actual budgets menu, you're going to see a budget planning. You're going to have the budgets repository. So again, budget repository is where you go to find your budgets and your budget details. Under the budget planning, this is where you can get to SIBP if you own that particular module. If you don't, it's going to look like this. And you can, of course, learn more or connect it once you own the subscription. They've also put spend management right here on the budget menu. This used to only be available on the configuration screen under the subscription screen. And so now when you click on spend management, you can immediately go to your spend management configuration based on permissions, of course, and see if there's something that you need to do to update in your budget for spend management. And then some of the reports are over here. So there's your budget report, your dimension balances report. We saw last release that now also includes budgets, which is awesome. And then your standard financial reports and custom reports. So a whole new menu for budgets, and you can access SIBP from the menu module. General ledger. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Irene. Okay, so Intacct is releasing a new concept of being able to see both negative and positive offset amounts now appear separately for each GL account in the general ledger report. So before, if you'd entered an invoice and you had both a debit and a credit amount on that invoice, it would have combined the amounts, as you see in this screen, to 5,001. Instead, now you will see the two amounts summarized in the general ledger with the debit amount and the credit amount. All right, this is pretty exciting for those of you who are nonprofits out there. Intacct is continuing to improve the product to help us work more efficiently. They've released a release of restriction functionality. So the first thing, it's a one-click release of restrictions. It does come with your core, if you have core, as long as you are using the quick start nonprofit or the nonprofit quick start, it is now enabled. In order to enable that, you need to go to GL permissions or GL configuration. Of course, you need to have permissions to do that, and check the box for enable nonprofit restriction release. You will need to add the permissions as we showed on the earlier slide, and then you will, when you activate it, it is designed for a periodic sweep of qualified expenses to release equivalent revenue, and you can filter by fund or source location. Now, one thing I want to note is that currently you are able to over release, so just be careful. If you're going to use this, you can over release, but if you're using spend management, it will work in conjunction with spend management.
Excellent. Let's talk inventory. For those of you that have the inventory module, some really nice new enhancements here. We continue to see Intacct improving their inventory module. So they've changed the way they're doing their calculation. So in the past, it was always quantity available was calculated by doing on hand minus on hold plus on order. But today, you're going to have today in the new release, you have the ability to kind of choose what it is that you want to do for that calculation. You can indicate whether or not you want those to include on order, in transit, or both. So a little bit more functionality. There's some reasons in there, where you might want to do each, right? If your purchase orders is long, you might want to exclude on order quantities. If lead time for in transit is short, then maybe you want to include in transit, or again, you can always do what's both, choose both. So a configuration setting that's really nice for you to be able to choose your calculation for quantity available. There are 2 new checkboxes in the configuration of inventory in order to enable this functionality. Under the Enable Functionality section, you can include quantity on order in quantity available. See that new checkbox down there? So that's your option. And by the way, that is the default setting. If you're already using inventory, Intacct has checked that. So if you don't want that checked, you can go in and uncheck it. So that's their migration, how they handled that. And then under the warehouse transfer section, that's where you can check the option to include in transit if you want that in your quantity available. Okay, so take a look at those new settings and make sure they're set right if you are using inventory. Some nice labeling. This kind of made me smile when I saw this, right? Because it was always called enable groupings. Like, why don't they just call this kitting? Well, they're finally calling it kitting. So now in your setup, you're going to see enable kitting, and it now says kits and stockable kits. So a little bit more appropriate labeling for those of you using kits. And this next one is an important one. So pay attention to this, because especially if you're just getting started or you're thinking of inventory, they're doing some data integrity improvements, right? So they're putting some controls in to help make sure that things are correct. So with inventory now, all of these items on the right, kitting, lot, expiration, bin, all of this list of items, once you enable these, and you have transactions, you will not be able to disable them. Of course, you don't necessarily have to use them, but in some cases, depending on how you have it set up, they could be required fields, etc. So be aware, if you're not using these features today and you think you want to use them, make sure that you understand the features and before you start using them and entering transactions, because again, you will not be able to disable them once transactions are entered.
That's a really good thing to know.
Yeah, right.
That's definitely a gotcha.
It's not always we can't uncheck something, but it's getting more and more based on what we're doing. Order entry and purchasing. Let's talk about that for a minute. So in order entry and purchasing, we now have the ability to enable the unit of measure feature without enabling inventory. Most of you are already using Sage Intacct. We've already enabled it. If you are, it's not a big deal. This is more of a new feature release. So if you're doing a brand new implementation or just going to implement order entry and purchasing, now we can do unit of measure enabled in order entry and purchasing without having the inventory module. Related specifically to order entry, there are 2 new fields that are in the details section of order entry now, quantity on hand and quantity available. They are only available for inventory item types, which of course does include stockable kits. So that's a nice feature. So if we go over here to Intacct, we come over to our accounts Irene order entry, we're adding an invoice. You're going to see those fields in there. So down here in your entry, here's that quantity on hand field right here. Nice, right? And then in the details section, and of course we know we can move things around, there's going to be that quantity available. Of course, the calculation for the quantity available is affected based on those 2 new settings that we just talked about a moment ago in inventory. So you'll want to make sure, again, those are set correctly. And the available quantities link in the details section of each line item is still available. So you can view information about the quantities if needed. See that way down here in the bottom right-hand corner. Another order entry enhancement is on the inventory status report. So they've renamed the quantity reserve column. They're calling it quantity on hold now. And they've added the ability to include that quantity of items in transit from one warehouse to another in the report. So a couple more checkboxes available and features in that inventory status report if you're using that one. Purchasing, a couple things related to purchasing. It's mostly around 3-way matching, okay? So this is that early adopter program. I know that there's a lot of people that have signed up for that. It's still available. They haven't fully released it yet. They're still testing it, but it's all about that matching the invoice, the purchase order, and the receipt to validate the details all coincide, everything is, you know, ducks are in a row before you make the payment. If you're interested in this, please let us know. The email is experts@armaninollp.com, or of course you can just reach out to your client manager here at Armanino and absolutely sign up for that if that's something that you're interested in testing.
Irene, I'm sure there's a bunch of clients out there who are thinking, oh, that kind of jerry-rigged approach we've taken, hooray, it's going to be in the system now.
Absolutely.
All right, cash management.
Let's go.
Let's go. All right, credit card transactions. So this is related to clients who are using cash basis books. So now you can post your credit card transactions and fees to the GL as soon as they're created. Note that you will need to go and configure in cash management. There's a new box to check. It's called Post Credit Card Transactions Charges and Fees to the GL after creation. And also note that credits and debits now appear in separate lines on the general ledger. Next. All right, again, related to, you can now draft, when you're doing your bank reconciliation, you can now draft a journal entry transaction and have it match in the bank. So there will now be a drafted matched choice for your bank rec transactions.
That's a tongue twister.
It's a total tongue twister, goodness.
All right, excellent. Before we go on to accounts payable, 2 things. There is a question in the Q&A. We use different terms for the items on the list, but then I'm not quite sure the rest of your sentence makes sense. So if you could just repost that question, that would be great, and we can get that answered. And then there is a question in the Q&A. You were told many years ago, many years, that Intacct was working on the ability to do some editing in credit card transactions, similar to the reclassification that can be done after a bill has been paid. Any word on this? I know it's not in this release. I don't know if it's in the roadmap. That's something we can look in the community and maybe see if we can find out if it's actually on the roadmap, but I have not. I'm assuming the reclassification feature, right? That we do in the bills is what you're saying here, but I have not seen that yet. Michelle was just
No, I
at the
haven't either,
conference,
yeah.
and so yeah, I don't know if it's on the roadmap, but I haven't seen it.
I
Good
certainly think we need to make sure we've got that out in the community and we're voting on that because that's a great idea.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about accounts payable and some of the enhancements there. In Intacct, we're going to go over to the accounts payable module and we're going to look at our bills list. And you'll notice on the bills list now that on the right-hand side, we can see attachments. You don't have to open a bill any longer to actually see the attachment. You can see it right from the view. A call out, however, right? They are only visible on the default view. So if you're using a custom view, something in here, unfortunately, it is not going to be available. So only on the default view. Let's launch polling question number 2, Kim, related to posting details. Another multiple choice. In which modules can you see the GL posting details for most transactions?
Okay, we see quite a few answers coming through. I'll leave it open for just a moment more.
This is such a nice thing that they're adding to the system. So you don't have, so you can find it in one spot.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in 3, 2, 1.
Excellent. So yes, indeed. So all of those are true except time and expense. Not there yet, but hoping to see that soon. But very excited that it is now available in the general, in accounts payable as well. We'll go ahead and stop sharing the results there. Let's get over into Intacct. So this is really nice. I'm going to go to the bills. So it's available this release in accounts payable, available on bills, adjustments, posted payments. So here, when I edit or view a bill, I can go to posting details and there I have my debits and credits. For those of us that have that accounting cap on all the time, I love it. Can actually see my debits and credits and where things are posting along with the journal. I can drill down to the journal, etc. So over in accounts payable, it's now visible in bills, adjustments, posted payments. It is available for manual payments, okay, but for the payment portion only, it doesn't show the entire. And noted here, accrual books only, so not visible if you're doing cash books, so it's accrual books. And then again, order entry, if we go over to order entry and we look at invoices, you can view or edit, and you're going to be able to see the GL posting tab. So they're starting to add it to almost all of these screens. Come on, Intacct, don't be slow. Nice features. And this is really nice over in the order entry and purchasing because it does give you the full debits and credits based on what you are posting. So that's nice. All right, so back to accounts payable enhancements. Approved payments, you can now create your own custom view on approved payments. So if you're an approver, you can actually go in and create a custom list view and see a few more fields that might be more beneficial to your view. And of course, we all know that with list views, we can include filters, we can remove fields, we can add our own sorts, so you can see exactly what you want to see. Last release, Intacct did some more audit trail in the general ledger closing and opening of books. And this release, they've done the same functionality over in the AP subledger books. So there is now a more actions button with the audit trail information. Okay, we come over to Intacct. We're going to go into accounts payable. Under the all tab, close and open a subledger. We're talking about the books here, right? So here we have it, more actions and an audit trail. The date and time are going to be based on your particular preference settings. Okay, and it's going to include whether it's a summary posting, whether it was the period or a summary. Remember that in the subledger modules, we can actually close individual summaries, which entities have been impacted, and then completed and source column. So continued enhancements on the audit trail within Intacct. Related to accounts receivable, there's that GL posting details we just talked about again. So that's nice. Accrual books only. Seeing that showing up everywhere in Intacct. And the excitement, drum roll please, is yay, the AR Advanced screen is now in the new user interface. Let's get over into Intacct and look at that. Accounts receivable, all advances. We don't often use advances. Some companies do. Well, we do have some companies that use it quite a bit, but this was one of those old screens. I should have thrown a screenshot in here to remind us what it looked like because it looks so nice now. So exciting. Couple of things related to this particular screen. You'll notice that there's a payment memo field in advances, just like they added to the payment receipt screen the last time. You can do smart rules and smart events on receive advances. That is really nice for those of you that use the smart rules and smart events. So maybe you want to get an email when an AR advance is created. You can do that now because smart rules and smart events are available. You can have your own custom list view on your advances. You can add attachments in advances, right? They've added an object in the custom report writer for advances. So yes, you can create custom reports on advances. And you have the ability now in the configuration screen to create your own summary because we know it has to post, right? It's going to debit, cash, and credit an advance account or whatever we have set up. So there is a configuration setting under AR where you can choose, do you want it to just create its own, or do you want to be able to create your own user-defined summary, which is very nice. So for those of you that use AR advances, I know you're excited because we finally see it in the new user interface, which gives us so much more of that functionality. Last one for accounts receivable is the custom aging periods is now available on the Intacct custom aging statement printed document template. So here on my screen, you can see that I have two different aging periods. So I have a custom one, which is called my aging period 2, where I'm doing a weekly aging. If I wanted that particular aging to be on the statement, I can have my aging versus just the out of the box 30, 60, 90. Okay, so you can have your own aging periods be on your statements to your customers.
That's great, Irene.
Yeah, back to you, Michelle.
Thank you. Okay, reporting and insights. We've got a few improvements this time. First thing, for those of you who are closing your books in a timely manner and you've got reports scheduled to go out, you can actually you now have a new selection down at the bottom. You see it says recurrence, and you can have it automatically send the reports on your close of your general ledger. So you close your general ledger and your reports get sent. Note that this can happen at both the top level or the entity level. So if you have reports built, a report group that's built at the entity level, and you select that you schedule it at the entity level and you close your entity books, then your reports will go out to your users. I think that's pretty slick.
Yeah, very nice.
And this is amazing. It's the little things in life. A couple times ago, it was that you could add a space. I know it sounds silly, but it's been something for 9 years I've wanted. Now, when you add your computations, you can name your computation. It doesn't just say computation A or computation 1, computation 2, computation 3. You can identify your computation in your report writer and put a description on there. And when you select it on your column, it has a lot more value. So that's a great release. And this was an idea from you guys. So seriously, they do look at the community. They absolutely look at your ideas, and we do recommend that you go out and vote.
Oh, Michelle, a good question for you that just came in the Q&A related to the opening and closing period again. Will that trigger the schedule reports to send again if you open and close the period?
I don't know that. I've got a bad feeling the answer is yes, but I don't know. I'll have to take that offline. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
It is a great question because oftentimes we do reopen the books to make it an entry or something, right? Or reclassify something and then close them again. So that is a great question.
I'll take a peek while you're speaking at the next thing and see if I can answer that.
Okay.
All right, I think it's back to you. Oh, advanced reporting. They've now added 2 new on your drop down in your in the quick start templates for both library reports and for both, sorry, the interactive custom report writer and the interactive visual explorer are now available in your report center. So they added last time they released that it now shows quick start library, and that when you select your report, it does the HTML version of it. Now they're just adding on to that and adding the interactive custom report writer and the interactive visual explorer. Just keeps getting better.
It does, absolutely. We also had another question in the Q&A about can you advise where the configuration checkbox is located? And I'm not sure which configuration.
Yes. The question, sorry, Irene, I answered that offline. The question was, can I be able to delete an AP invoice when posted instead of reversing option? And I said there's a configuration in accounts payable. Do you want to show that?
So over in accounts payable and setup and configuration.
Yep.
Okay, and which one are we going to?
And we are talking about, if you scroll down, it's allow reclassification of
down
bills.
here under enable functionality. Yep. So
it's a confusing one. So it says if enabled for reversal, bills cannot be deleted. So if you uncheck that enable reversal of unpaid bills box, you can then delete. Again, that is based on your permissions. You have to have permissions to delete, but yes, that is where you would uncheck it.
Got it. Thank you.
And thank you for asking that.
Good questions in the Q&A today.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's keep going. Contracts. Okay, you like to do testing, you like to be a beta tester, here's your chance again. So Intacct is doing a beta release for their new bulk action run feature. Try to say that 3 times. So they're rolling out what they're calling their preparatory bulk action run functionality, okay? And it's currently only available for posting revenue and expense recognition, but hey, it's a start. That'll get some excitement for some of you. When they say currently, that tells us they're going to be adding more functionality as they go, right? So when the bulk action completes, an email notification is sent to the user who initiated the action, letting you know that it has been complete. And it shows the details about the contract lines involved in the process. So if it posts successfully, it displays a link to the applicable revenue schedule. If it doesn't post successfully, it displays an error to help you identify and correct data issues. Hopefully it's a real easy error, a message that really helps you do that. So here's the bulk action run screen. I can't show it in Intacct because I'm not registered for the beta testing for it, but this is kind of what it looks like. If you're interested in trying it out, there is the email address that you can email and send, okay? I feel like we're missing something on that email. It's probably at sage.com. So if you have trouble with that email, let us know, but I feel like it might be missing at sage.com. Hopefully the link in here works to take you where it needs to go though, okay?
It is at sage.com.
Okay, so the whole, if you click it, it is there. No, okay, sage.com. And again, it will be generally available at a later date, but if you are doing a lot of that posting of revenue and expenses, then go ahead. If you want to sign up for that, please do. The more people that test it, the more input it gets, the better it comes out in the long run. Another nice contract enhancement. You know, the beauty of having this cloud-based system is that many of us can be working in the same records at the same time. Occasionally that can cause problems, but not very often. And Intacct identified that there were some issues in the contract as far as it wasn't always locking the record at the appropriate time when a couple of people were in there at the same time. So now you will get messages related to record locking when another user is performing one of these actions in a record already. So if they're posting revenue rec, they're creating or clearing an MEA allocation, you're going to get a record lock message. Okay. The AR receipt date now used for paid revenue reclass entries. So they're using the receipt date. And there are new validations when MEAs include both positive and negative contract lines. And the MEA journal entries has now been summarized. So you can see the old journal entry there in the past. Every single line, right, to the contract was included in a journal entry. That made some huge journal entries for some of you out there using contracts. Today, Intacct is posting a summarized, of course, based on the dimensions used, etc. So much smaller entries with that MEA journal entry. Anything related to the questions in here on the Q&A or the chat? I guess we have another question, Michelle, related to the scheduled reporting there. So we'll have to follow up on that one as well. Thank you. Keep
I
those
did. I
questions
just
coming.
looked and I can't find. I would have to test it, and I don't want to do that because I'll miss the cue for this.
Okay, so we'll follow
However,
back up on. Yeah.
it does make sense actually. If you make a release, if you made a change, I would want it to re-trigger. I mean, I recognize, I can understand for people who are going in and out. I can see both sides of it. So
yeah, maybe if we have time at the end, we can look at that a little bit in Intacct as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good questions on that. I'm glad to see people are interested in using it. That's exciting. All right, platform and web service enhancements, not a whole lot here, only two. This is for your IT folks, right? Related to anybody that's doing any sort of integrations and stuff. So accounts receivable, there's a new AR advance object, which makes sense because we just saw they rolled out a new advanced screen with more fields. So it's nice that the AR advance object is now available as well. And then on accounts payable, it's related to the early adopter program on electronic payment services. This is all about a new feature that Intacct is using, right? Electronic payments called CSI. So if you're signing up for that or using that, then definitely that might be something that you would need. And then Advanced CRM. So one really exciting enhancement on Advanced CRM, if you have the integration, yes, you can now have statistical journals and statistical journal entries sync between Intacct and CRM. So there's a couple of requirements. You have to, of course, have a subscription in Intacct, right? You have to configure and set up Intacct, and you have to have a configuration and setup in Salesforce and admin users to be able to do that. But what can you do with this? What does this really mean? Well, you can now have win-loss ratios of your Salesforce opportunities, right? If you think about it, Salesforce really tracks so much statistics. Well, you can bring those over and have statistical entries over in Intacct, have them on your dashboard to do your computations and calculations. So having that ability to link statistical information between Salesforce and Sage Intacct is awesome, and I know that some of you will use that so that you can get a lot more types of win-loss ratios with your opportunities. And I'm sure there's more examples than that as well.
Irene, another question came in. What if, I'm sorry, for journal entries back to contracts, are they able to run it with the individual descriptions instead of the batch description? Do you know if they can do it in detail?
Yeah, is there a configuration that says detail versus summary? That's, I think, is probably what we're asking then, huh?
Right.
That's a good question. Individual descriptions shown instead of the general batch description. I am not aware of a setting that has changed allowing for that individual one. So we'll follow up on that one as well and make sure, but I haven't seen anything that allows for that change. Lots of good questions. Construction, of course, is still the early adopter program. It continues to expand functionality. I don't know if anybody out there is using the construction module, but they continue to constantly enhance it for the construction industry. You can now email or print your project change requests. You can delete change order documents based on your permissions and configuration, of course, right? So a couple nice new things there. And as always, email us or your client manager here at Armanino if you do have some more interest or have interest in being part of that construction early adopter program.
Awesome.
Michelle,
Yep.
taxes.
Taxes are my favorite thing. All right, so we're going to start with the polling question. Kim, if you'll start our polling question. Which option describes your current 1099 process? Do you print your 1099s, you export and use another system? Do you outsource your 1099 work? And what are 1099s? And then there's other.
Great, got lots of answers coming in. I'll give it just a few more moments.
And for those of you that said other, feel free to put in the chat what your other is.
Absolutely.
Okay, closing the poll in 3, 2, 1.
So it looks like the majority of you are printing your 1099s from Sage Intacct, which is great to hear. So let's get started and find out what they've improved. So first of all, 1099s, your 1099 tax forms are available to purchase. This is the link to get to that so that you can purchase them. And also they've added a new functionality in your Form 1099 setup that you can print corrected Form 1099s. Also, for those of you getting ready for your 1099s, I do highly recommend that you create a list with your vendors so that you can review or so that you can audit the vendors out there now instead of waiting until January to find out if you've got their the W-9s, etc. And Irene, were you going to show that list view for vendors?
Yep, we're going to accounts payable, all vendors. Love these list view options that are available out there. And here's the one that Michelle created.
So this will show you, obviously, if you've got all of your boxes, your proper boxes filled out. And in this, since we're in a demo, you'll see we still have some MISC box 7s, which we know went away last year. But it's a good place to be able to audit it.
Yeah, and having that custom list view is awesome because you could also filter to see just your 1099 vendors, right? And have that ability to see that there and then update as well. So if you do need to make a bunch of changes, if you've got something wrong, you can always export and re-import back in and be focused on just that one view. I'm confident that all of you watching today's webinar use custom views because they are the best. Okay.
All right. So for those of you who need some help with your 1099s, we do a little advertisement here. We do at the Academy, we have a watch and learn webinar scheduled in December. You will learn, we'll review the 1099 NEC form. You'll identify 1099 setup best practices, discuss methods for 1099 transactions, and explain the 1099 printing and exporting functionality. So I highly recommend if you want to attend that, that would be great. Next screen. All right, taxes. So as Sage Intacct continues to expand its reach across the world, they're adding a bunch of functionality related to taxes. So you can now edit transactions after a tax submission. You can add or remove standard tax solutions. For Canadian tax, there's submission support related to GST and HST. There's reverse a charge support for the UK. You have accrual and cash dual method accounting support, increased flexibility for tax schedule use, and tax object reuse for tax solutions. So lots of tax stuff.
Yeah, we've got some 1099 questions coming in.
Oh,
let's
go.
So is the 1099 webinar listed somewhere to register? Yes, it is on the Academy site. You will get a copy of that as of this deck. I think, do we send out a copy of this deck? Kim, I can't remember.
We absolutely do, yes.
Okay, so there is a link coming up in another slide here. And I'll also can show you where that is, but we do have an Academy website where you can see all of the upcoming classes. I'll just show you really quick for those of you that are interested. You can go to Academy here. This is where all of the Academy upcoming classes are. But again, there is a link in the slide deck that'll take you to this page. You can go to the service line. You can focus here on Sage Intacct, and then you can come down and you can actually filter for just 1099 if you want to see those classes. Gives a little bit more detail about that deep dive, what all is going to be happening there. So that's the Academy website, and the link is in the deck. So you'll see that coming up here shortly. Thank you. How to stop a 1099 that was set up in error when you have multiple locations, each issuing 1099s. That's a great question.
So would this be just adjusting the vendor to not have 1099s?
Yeah, so under your vendor setup, right, we can go into edit a particular vendor. Let's say this vendor set up for 1099s, and under the additional information tab is where the form 1099 is set up. When you come in here, you are not really assigning by entity, but you're able to correct balances by entity. So here we have each entity, and once I select an entity, you can come in and you can adjust by either doing, like, if you need to decrease it, you can do a minus, or you add to increase it. So that's going to adjust a balance. But if you literally want to stop a vendor from getting 1099s, that might be what is also the question here, like literally just getting rid to say none, this vendor is no longer available for 1099s. If you're saying that yes, the vendor is available in some entities, but not other entities, then that might be what you're saying. How to stop a 1099 that was set up in error when you have multiple locations using that 1099, issuing 1099s. So Michelle, I'm thinking off the top here, but if you're doing transactions in multiple entities and you only want a 1099 vendor to be eligible in certain entities, you would have to, at the transaction level, when you enter transactions, check the box to get 1099 or not.
Right. Or possibly set up two vendors.
Yeah.
Set a vendor up that's specific to that entity, which seems like that would be difficult to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like to make things that are difficult to maintain.
That's right.
Try to keep it easy for y'all.
Good
Okay,
question, though.
so we have our last polling question. And this is asking you guys, everyone on the call, I am not aware of the following features in Sage Intacct. Did you know you can customize the layout of entries section in a transaction?
And remember, she's saying not aware.
Right. Did you know that you could, did you not know that you, I guess I'll start, did you not know that? No, you tongue ties left and right here, aren't you? Amount fields are calculators. Did you not know you could create your own journals for specific needs? Did you not know that you could use smart events to populate a field in a transaction? That you could add collaborate to your dashboard? That you could segregate permissions related to bank reconciliation, or that you could default an account for each, a GL account for each vendor by adding, and I don't know what the rest of that says actually.
You just stretch your polling question.
All right, yep, here we go. Sorry. By adding, when adding bills. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, I'll give them a little bit more time on this one. There's a lot of
Yeah,
answers
they have
there.
to think for a minute. Yeah.
Plus you got to go the wrong direction in your head here.
While they're doing that, we're going to answer another question from the Q&A, and that is when the credit card transactions are converted from cash management to an AP bill. So if we come into accounts payable, we're doing bills here, and we are wanting the liabilities, right? I think if I do liability, Michelle, I get the credit card liability ones. Yes. So this is a charge payoff that's coming from the cash management module, right? And so we're, am I able to add an attachment to this bill? So you'll notice right here, it is not available. They kind of lock this liability one down, right? So there's no way in here, there's no reclassify, there's no way to add an attachment to a liability, which is a credit card transaction. Okay, so unfortunately at this time, there's no way to add an attachment.
Okay, so if everybody's answered, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll out in 3, 2, 1.
All right, and sharing results. Let's see what we've got here. We've got about 10 minutes left, so we're going to show you some of these things that people didn't know about. So the one that got the most, using a smart event to populate a field in a transaction screen. Let me show you. We're going to go to Platform Services, and we are going to go to, under our All tab, a smart event. When you add a smart event, the first thing you have to do is pick an object. So let's say that we want to automatically populate on our invoice for our customer. I'll give you a good example. So we have our AR invoice screen, or it could be order entry, doesn't matter, but we'll go ahead and do our invoice screen. And I'm going to come over here to a second tab, and I'm going to come to accounts receivable and actually just pull up an invoice. Let's say that you have sales people listed on your customer record. So you utilize sales folks. That's a customer document. It's not on the invoice, but when you send the invoice to the customer, right, you want the salesperson's name to be on the invoice. You would create a custom field on your invoice screen called salesperson or whatever you wanted to call it. So you would create a custom field, and then on the smart event, you would pick the invoice object, and under the smart event, you can send an email, right? We can send an email when a new customer is added or something like that. But notice you have the option here to do API. Okay, so API, you select API, and on add, so when you add this new invoice, you can have conditions, requirements, and then you literally build API body. So you're going to do basically what's called an update statement, right? So we're going to do an update, and the update is going to be on the AR invoice screen. And so you build this code. You're doing coding, programming. So you're doing a smart event that is going to update and populate a field on a screen. Guys have a power horse under you. Don't hesitate to use it. Armanino has a lot of expertise in doing smart events and smart rules. If you need any help or have ideas for those, just please reach out. I will share with you, I just did one the other day where we are actually creating a journal entry via a smart event on transactions. So this is a not-for-profit, and they do grant awards, and they want to track every time they give out a grant award into a statistical entry. So every time we add an order entry transaction that's a grant award, we populate with a 1 in the statistical entry to get a grant award. Yes, you can create a smart event on AP bills, absolutely. There are almost most transaction screens, most master records, you can do smart events, okay? What you have to remember about smart events is they trigger when you close or save the document. So it has to be something that it triggers when you close or save the document. So smart events, if you need more information on those, let us know. The second most popular item, segregate permissions related to bank reconciliation. Let's go under company, admin, roles. Let's just go ahead and grab any role. And we're going to go down to cash management. And you're going to notice under cash management, look at reconcile bank, you guys. Here's your reconcile bank. Permissions on add, edit, delete, reconcile, reopen. So all sorts of permissions there. So you can have one person go in, completely do the reconciliation, get it ready, and someone else come in and actually click the reconcile button. So segregating permissions related to bank recs, a nice feature. The next one, since we have time for one more, Michelle, you watching the
Yes.
Q&A chat? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Customizing the layout of entry screens. So 18 folks there, let's go do that. Accounts payable, it can be the bill screen, it can be the journal screen, it can be any transaction screen. You cannot change the header, but you can change the entry section. So down here's the entry section. Note that you have to be a full admin user to do this. So if we go to more actions, you'll know right away if you have permissions or not. It's going to say edit entries layout. Don't be confused. There's a couple different ones. Let me go somewhere else real quick. I'm going to go to purchasing and I'm going to go up under more actions in purchasing. Notice there is edit this page. Nope, that's not the one you want. You want edit entries layout. When you go into edit entries layout, here you have all of the fields. Notice that I can drag and drop and I can bring things around and I can control the layout. So I can move things below into the detail line, or I can move them up onto my line up here, making it user friendly in the order that I need it. For the edit layout entries section, that is company specific. In other words, entity 100 can have one layout. Entity 200 could have another layout, but Michelle and Irene cannot have separate layouts. So it is, you can do a different layout by entity, but not by person. Okay, well, that was fun. I'm glad we asked these questions. We've got about 4 minutes left. Any other things that we need to address? We're still we need to follow back up on this scheduled report process.
We do. And someone asked about where to find information about the coding language, and developer.intacct.com has all sorts of information.
Yep. So if you go to developer, as Michelle said, developer.intacct.com. Here's their API reference. This will give you a lot of reference for how you do your smart events and smart rules. And the community has some examples, and the help text even has good information. If you're in Intacct, you can go to the help text and you can find information about smart rules and smart events too.
Intacct has a class also at the Learning Center.
They do. Mm-hmm.
Using smart rules and smart events.
And for those of you who attended the conference last week in Vegas, either virtually or live, they had classes on how to do smart events and smart rules as well. Sage Transform.
Yes.
We have 3 minutes left. Any more questions? I'm going to show one more for the last minute while people are thinking of their last questions. We'll pick the next one in the list. So 12 of you did not know you could create a group and schedule it for distribution. Michelle kind of talked about that one already. Okay, and then defaulting a GL account. So if you go into accounts payable, this is for bills, right? If you go into accounts payable and you go into a vendor record, on the additional information tab right here, you can default an expense account. So every time you add a bill, it'll automatically populate with whatever particular account that you put in the vendor record. But of course, you can always override it when needed. The last one that has 11 votes is that you can have amount. Oh, your amount fields are your calculator. Yes.
Oh, that's
yes,
your favorite, Irene. I can't believe you didn't start with that one.
Well, it didn't have the most votes, so a lot of people already know about it, right? Absolutely. So all of your amount fields are calculators. All you have to do is start typing, hit one of your operators on your calculator on your keyboard. So I can do times, I can do divided by, I can do plus. Just keep typing, hit your enter key. So all of your amount fields in Intacct are calculators, almost all. There's a couple of them out there that it's not in there, but most of them are there. All right, we are out of time.
All right.
Yes,
Irene,
top level, top
ahead.
level for default expense accounts. Yes, top level. Okay. And we'll close it up. Thank you very much. Here's your link to the Armanino Academy. Thank you very much for attending today. We sincerely appreciate your time. Enjoyed having you on our class, and we will follow up with any of those unanswered questions.
Great. Thank you, Irene, and thank you, Michelle, and thank you
Thank
everyone
you.
for
Thanks,
joining today.
everybody.
And just a reminder, you will receive a copy of this presentation and the slides in the next day or so.